Every morning at 6 a.m. for 6 months, Grace had done the same thing. She would spot the frail old man sitting on his piece of cardboard, looking hungry and forgotten by the world. And every single morning, she would give him her best food, akara balls, fresh bread, sweet tea, never knowing she was feeding one of the richest men in all of Nigeria. The man she called Papa Benji was actually Benjamin Okoro, oil and gas magnate worth billions of naira. And on this morning, the morning that would change everything, he was about to reveal the truth. If you're loving this story already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because today's tale will change how you see kindness forever. And don't forget to comment below what country you're watching from and your local time right now. But let me take you back to where this incredible journey began, 6 months earlier in the bustling streets of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Every morning at exactly 6 a.m., Grace Adebayo wheeled her modest food cart through the crowded streets of Port Harcourt's commercial district. The metal cart, dented and weathered from years of use, carried her entire livelihood, steaming akara balls, fresh bread, and sweet tea that filled the morning air with comfort. At 28, Grace carried herself with a dignity that poverty couldn't touch. Her clothes were simple but clean, her smile genuine despite the weight of responsibility that rested on her shoulders. As an orphan who'd lost both parents in a car accident 5 years earlier, she understood struggle in ways most people her age couldn't imagine. Akara! Fresh akara and bread! Her voice rang out melodiously above the morning chaos. Hot tea to start your day! Her customers included construction workers heading to job sites, office employees catching public transport, and market traders opening their shops. Many had become regulars, drawn not just to her delicious food, but to her infectious warmth. "Grace," called Mr. Emeka, a bank security guard. "The usual, please. And make that tea extra sweet today. I have a feeling it's going to be a long day." "Coming right up, Mr. Emeka," Grace replied, carefully ladling the perfect portion. "May this day bring you unexpected blessings." These interactions weren't just business transactions for Grace. They were moments of human connection that reminded her why she chose kindness even when life had been far from kind to her. Back in their small one-room apartment in a crowded residential area, 10-year-old Samuel was getting ready for school. Grace's son was bright beyond his years, carrying the same gentle spirit as his mother, but with a sharp intelligence that gave Grace hope for their future. "Mama, you're giving away too much food again," Samuel had said that very morning, watching his mother pack extra portions. "Mrs. Rose says we need to think of ourselves first." Grace knelt down to Samuel's eye level, adjusting his school uniform shirt. "Samuel, my dear, when we have little and still choose to share, we're telling the universe that we trust it to provide for us. Your mama learned this from your grandmother, and someday, you'll understand too." It was on that corner, where the main commercial road intersected with 3 smaller streets, that Grace first encountered him. An elderly man, appearing to be in his 60s, sat on a piece of cardboard. His clothes were tattered and dirty, his hair unkempt, and his eyes held a weariness that seemed to speak of countless hardships. "Please, my sister," he called out to passing vendors in a weak voice. "Just small food. I never eat yesterday." Grace watched as 3 other food vendors actively avoided him, one even shooing him away with harsh words. "Go away, old man. You're driving away our customers with your begging." But something about the man's quiet dignity touched Grace's heart. Despite his appearance, he didn't demand or guilt-trip anyone. He simply asked and accepted rejection with the same grace he might accept assistance. "Papa," Grace called out, approaching with a plate of her best akara and fresh bread. "Please, take this." The old man's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. "My daughter, you are too kind. But I have no money to pay." "Papa, did I ask for money?" Grace smiled, setting the plate beside him along with a cup of sweet tea. "Just eat, and may God bless you." As he ate, the old man studied Grace with an intensity that might have seemed unusual if she hadn't been busy serving other customers. "What is your name, my kind daughter?" "Grace, Papa." "And what should I call you?" "Call me Papa Benji," he replied with a small smile. "And Grace, your kindness will return to you sevenfold. Mark my words." Grace chuckled softly. "Papa Benji, I don't do this for blessings. I do it because it's right." But Papa Benji's eyes twinkled with something that seemed almost prophetic. "That, my dear Grace, is exactly why the blessings will come." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Every single morning, Papa Benji appeared at that same corner. Rain or shine, whether Grace arrived early or was running behind schedule, he was there with that same gentle request and profound gratitude. What struck Grace wasn't just his consistency, but how he carried himself. Despite his raggedness, Papa Benji never smelled of alcohol like many street beggars. His speech was articulate, and occasionally, Grace caught glimpses of intelligence in their brief conversations that seemed incongruous with his circumstances. "Papa Benji, were you educated?" Grace asked that morning as she handed him his food. "Life educated me, my daughter," he replied mysteriously. "And you? What dreams do you have beyond this cart?" Grace was surprised by the question. Most people saw her current situation as her final destination, but Papa Benji seemed to see something more. "I dream of Samuel going to university," she said honestly. "I dream of having a small restaurant someday, where I can employ other struggling mothers. But for now, this cart and God's grace are enough." Papa Benji nodded approvingly. Dreams rooted in service to others are dreams that the universe conspires to fulfill. Unknown to Grace, her daily act of kindness was being observed by more eyes than she realized. Benjamin Okoro, the real identity of Papa Benji, was indeed one of Port Harcourt's most successful businessmen, with interests in oil and gas, real estate, and manufacturing. But Benjamin was also a man who'd learned that wealth without character was meaningless. Having built his empire from humble beginnings, he understood the value of integrity, kindness, and genuine compassion. "David," he told his 30-year-old son during one of their weekly dinners at their sprawling estate, "I've been watching this young woman for 3 months now. Every single day, she gives me her best food without hesitation." David Okoro, a successful architect who'd inherited his father's sharp business mind and honest character, initially worried about his father's strange experiment. "Papa, are you sure about this disguise business? What if someone recognizes you? And why put yourself through this discomfort?" Benjamin's eyes grew serious. "David, my son, I've been looking for someone with genuine character to invest in, not just money, but our family's values. I've seen wealthy people with hearts of stone and poor people with hearts of gold. This Grace, she has something special." As weeks passed, Benjamin began intensifying his tests. Sometimes he'd bring other homeless friends, actually his trusted employees in disguise, to see how Grace would respond to multiple requests. "Papa Benji," Grace would exclaim, never showing annoyance. "You brought friends today. Please, everyone sit. There's enough for all." She would divide her portions, sometimes leaving barely enough for herself and Samuel's breakfast. When she ran short, Grace would quietly excuse herself, rush to a nearby vendor, and buy additional food with her own profits to ensure everyone was fed. Benjamin's employees, initially skeptical of their boss's experiment, found themselves genuinely moved by Grace's consistent generosity. "Boss," whispered James, one of his security chiefs, during a debrief, "that woman gave away her last portion and bought more with her own money. She doesn't even know we were watching." "Grace, my dear," Mrs. Rose said that evening as they sat outside their building, watching Samuel play with other children, "you're too generous for your own good. I've been watching you give away food to that old beggar every day. What happens when you can't pay rent?" Grace respected Mrs. Rose, who'd been like a mother to her since Samuel's birth. But she couldn't explain the deep conviction that drove her actions. "Mama Rose, I understand your concern, but I can't turn away from someone who's hungry. When my parents died and I was pregnant with Samuel, strangers helped me. How can I not help others now?" Mrs. Rose shook her head worriedly. "Child, there's a difference between helping occasionally and what you're doing. You're feeding that man and his friends almost daily now. Your landlord already asked me about your rent." That night, Grace counted her savings, barely enough for 2 months' rent and Samuel's school fees. She was falling behind, but every morning, when she saw Papa Benji's grateful face, she couldn't bring herself to stop. "Mama," Samuel asked that night as they shared a meager dinner, "why do you give the best food to Papa Benji? Sometimes we eat bread while he eats bread, akara and tea." Grace pulled Samuel close. "Because, my love, when we have little and still share our best, we're showing faith that God will provide. Your papa, God rest his soul, used to say that generosity is never about what we have, but about who we choose to be." 6 months after first meeting Papa Benji, disaster struck. Grace's food cart, already old and overused, finally broke down completely. The wheel axle snapped during her morning commute, sending akara balls rolling into the dirt and spilling precious tea onto the asphalt. "No, no, no!" Grace cried, frantically trying to salvage what she could. Passers-by helped gather scattered items, but half her morning inventory was ruined. The repair estimate was devastating, 15,000 naira, money she simply didn't have. Her landlord had already given her final notice, and Samuel needed new school uniforms for the upcoming term. After that disaster that morning, she managed to prepare just one small portion of food using her emergency ingredients at home. As she walked to her usual selling spot with a small tray instead of her cart, her heart was heavy with worry. And there, as always, sat Papa Benji. "Good morning, my daughter Grace," he called out with his usual gentle smile. "You look troubled today." Grace stared at the single portion in her tray, the portion meant for Samuel's breakfast before school. Every rational thought screamed at her to keep it, to explain her situation, to ask for understanding. Instead, Grace found herself walking over and placing the food before Papa Benji. "Papa, this is all I have today, but you need it more than we do." Papa Benji looked at the food, then at Grace's face, reading the sacrifice behind her action. "My daughter, are you sure? You look like you haven't eaten well yourself." "I'm sure, Papa. Please eat." As Papa Benji blessed the food and began eating, Grace felt a strange peace settle over her spirit, even as her stomach growled with hunger. 2 days later, Samuel woke up with a high fever. Grace's heart sank as she felt his burning forehead and saw his labored breathing. With no money for private health care, she carried him to the free public clinic, where they waited for hours among dozens of other desperate families. "Mama," Samuel whispered weakly, "I'm sorry I got sick. I know we can't afford medicine." Grace fought back tears, stroking her son's hair. "Don't you ever apologize for being sick, my love. Mama will figure something out." But privately, Grace was terrified. She had exactly 300 naira left, not enough for medication if Samuel needed anything beyond basic treatment. As they waited, Grace found herself praying more fervently than she had since her parents' death. "God, I've tried to be faithful with what little you gave me. I've shared when I had nothing to spare. Please, don't let my son suffer because of my choices. If I've been foolish with my generosity, let me bear the consequences, not Samuel." It was in that sterile waiting room, with Samuel burning with fever beside her, that Grace's world changed forever. The footsteps she heard approaching seemed purposeful, different from the shuffling of other worried families. When she looked up, her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. Papa Benji stood before her, but this Papa Benji wore an impeccably tailored navy suit, polished leather shoes, and carried himself with unmistakable authority. Beside him stood a tall, handsome man in his 30s, also well-dressed, watching her with kind but intense eyes. "Grace," Papa Benji said, his voice now carrying the weight of someone accustomed to command, "my name is Benjamin Okoro, and I owe you an explanation." Grace's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. This couldn't be real. The Benjamin Okoro? Everyone in Port Harcourt knew that name. Oil and gas magnate, philanthropist, one of the richest men in the state. I don't understand, Grace whispered. Benjamin knelt beside her, his eyes gentle despite his transformed appearance. For 6 months, you fed me every morning. Not once did you hesitate, not once did you ask for anything in return. Even today, when you had only one portion and your son was sick, you gave it to me without question. The younger man stepped forward. Grace, I'm David, Benjamin's son. My father has been documenting your kindness for months. We've been watching not just how you treated him, but how you've helped other vendors, how you've raised your son, how you've carried yourself despite facing real hardship. Grace looked between them, her mind reeling. But why? Why would you do this? Benjamin's expression grew serious. Because, Grace, I've learned that true character can't be faked when you think no one important is watching. I've seen wealthy people step over beggars and poor people share their last meal. You consistently chose kindness when kindness was costly. Every morning, David continued, you gave my father your best portions. We watched you borrow money to buy extra food when he brought friends. We saw you go hungry so others could eat. That kind of character is rare, Grace, and it's exactly what we've been looking for. First things first, Benjamin said, pulling out his phone. Dr. Adebayo? Yes, it's Benjamin. I'm at the public clinic with a young boy who needs immediate attention. Thank you. Within minutes, Samuel was being wheeled to a private room for proper examination and treatment. Grace followed in stunned silence, unable to process the rapid transformation of their circumstances. After few hours, Grace finally managed as they sat in the comfortable private waiting room, Mr. Benjamin, I can't afford private treatment. I have only 300 naira. Grace, Benjamin interrupted gently, the only thing you need to worry about is Samuel's recovery. Everything else is taken care of. David leaned forward. Grace, my father and I would like to make you a business proposition. We've been looking for someone with genuine character to partner with in a food service venture. Based on what we've observed, we believe you're that person. Grace felt dizzy. I don't understand. I'm just a woman with a broken food cart. I'm behind on rent. I have no business experience. You have something more valuable than business experience, Benjamin replied. You have integrity, compassion, and an understanding of real customer service that can't be taught. You've been running a successful small business for years, you just haven't had the capital to expand it. Benjamin opened a leather folder. We want to offer you partnership in starting a chain of food outlets across Port Harcourt. You would be the managing partner, with full operational control. We provide the investment capital, you provide the vision and management. Grace stared at the documents, seeing numbers that seemed impossibly large. But why me? Surely there are more qualified people. Qualified how? David asked. Grace, we've watched business school graduates with impressive resumes treat customers poorly because they thought certain people were beneath them. We've seen people with perfect financial statements compromise their integrity for small gains. What you've shown us is worth more than any degree. As they stepped into the corridor for privacy, David's demeanor became more personal. Grace, there's something else I need to tell you. Over these months of watching you, I found myself drawn not just to your character, but to you as a person. Grace looked at him with surprise. This successful, educated, undoubtedly wealthy man was expressing romantic interest in her? I know this might seem sudden, David continued, and I want you to know that the business offer stands regardless of your personal feelings toward me. But I hope, in time, you might allow me to court you properly. Grace felt overwhelmed. David, this is all happening so fast. Yesterday I was worried about rent, and today you're talking about business partnerships and courtship." "I understand," David said gently. "Take all the time you need. But I want you to know that what I've seen in you, your strength, your kindness, the way you're raising Samuel, these are the qualities I've been hoping to find in a life partner." After a while, she returned to the private ward to check on her son. "Mama!" Samuel called out weakly, though his voice carried a little more strength than before. "The doctor says I'll be fine," he added with a faint smile. "I just needed some medicine and fluids." Grace hugged him carefully, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank God, my baby. Thank God." Benjamin smiled, watching the interaction. "Grace, Samuel is a credit to your parenting. Polite, intelligent, well-mannered despite your struggles. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." 3 months later, Grace's first restaurant opened in the heart of Port Harcourt's commercial district. The location Benjamin had chosen was perfect, visible from the main road, accessible to both office workers and residential customers. Grace had insisted on starting small, despite Benjamin's willingness to fund a larger operation immediately. "Mr. Benjamin, I need to prove to myself that I can do this successfully before expanding," she had said. The restaurant employed 6 people, 3 other single mothers Grace had personally recruited and trained, plus 2 young men looking for their first jobs. Grace remembered what it felt like to need opportunities and made sure her business created them for others. "Grace," called Mrs. Rose, who had become one of her regular customers, "the jollof rice is even better than your mama's used to be." Samuel, now in a proper private school but still his humble, well-mannered self, would come to the restaurant after classes to do homework and help where he could. "Mama," he said that afternoon, "Papa Uncle Benjamin, was right. Your kindness really did come back 7-fold." Grace smiled, watching her thriving business. "Samuel, the blessings aren't just the money or the restaurant. The real blessing is learning that when we plant seeds of kindness, we never know what beautiful things might grow." Her relationship with David had developed naturally over those months. He had courted her respectfully, involving himself in Samuel's education and interests, proving his commitment to both mother and son. "You know," David said one evening as they walked together after closing the restaurant, "I used to think love was about finding someone who impressed me. But watching you has taught me that love is about finding someone who inspires me to be better." Grace had grown to appreciate David's genuine character, his respect for her independence, and his patient approach to building their relationship. He never made her feel like a charity case but treated her as an equal partner in every decision. Grace's wedding to David was attended by an interesting mix of people. Wealthy business associates of the Okoro family sat alongside food vendors from Grace's old selling route, single mothers she employed, and neighbors from her former apartment building. During his speech, Benjamin's words carried deep emotion. "Many people think success is about accumulating wealth. But watching Grace has taught our family that true success is about accumulating character." Her simple act of feeding a hungry stranger didn't just transform her life, it transformed ours. Mrs. Rose, now dressed in beautiful traditional attire, wiped away tears. "That girl always had a good heart. I'm glad the world finally recognized it." Samuel, now confident and articulate but still humble, spoke briefly. "My mama taught me that kindness is never wasted, even when we can't see immediate results. Today proves she was right." 1 year later, Grace's business had grown to 4 locations across Port Harcourt, each one employing primarily single mothers and young people looking for opportunities. But Grace never forgot her roots. Every morning, at the same corner where she first met Papa Benji, Grace had established a free breakfast program for the homeless and unemployed. She personally oversaw it, ensuring quality food and dignified service. "Why do you still come here yourself?" asked Sarah, one of her managers. "You could send staff to handle this." Grace smiled, ladling fresh akara into a container for an elderly woman. "Because this is where I learned that every person deserves dignity." I never want to forget that lesson. At home, the Okoro family had found a perfect balance. Grace brought warmth and groundedness to their wealth, while David and Benjamin provided stability and opportunities. Samuel thrived in his new environment but remained the polite, thoughtful child Grace had raised. "Mama," Samuel said one evening during homework time, "my teacher asked us to write about someone who changed our lives. I want to write about Papa Benji, how he taught us that tests sometimes come disguised as opportunities to help." Grace nodded approvingly. "That's beautiful, Samuel. And what lesson will you take from this story?" "That character is more valuable than money, and that kindness is an investment that always pays dividends, but only when we give it freely." If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales that remind us of the power of human kindness. Comment below and tell us what you've learned from the story. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their character matters more than their circumstances. Until next time, keep planting seeds of kindness.